At least she's enjoying it. I'm not. My heart melts as his tentacles unfasten my barista apron. This is the point where the book truly becomes something I never could have foreseen. There's a blight on the TikTok For You page. A certain type of book that is being recommended to people over and over again, unprovoked, out of nowhere, having nothing to do with their regular taste in books. I have seen it on my For You page many times, and I keep looking at it because I'm just so fascinated and weirded out at the same time. I'm talking about the monster smut written by Siggy Shade. These monster smut stories always involve some bizarre monster human romance, from stalking boogeymans to your boyfriend cheating with Bigfoot to tentacle monsters from another dimension. They're recommended with the use of these seemingly AI generated images, accompanied by a bit of explanation of the plot and of course a spice rating. And these TikToks get almost millions of views just because of how bizarre they are. There are even TikToks of people talking about getting Siggy Shade on their For You page.
Siggy Shade, what is the brain activity up there? Like,
now this is a book reviewing channel, and let's just say that my curiosity got the best of me and I decided to take one for the team. So I read Tentacle Entanglement by Siggy Shade. At what cost? When you accidentally summon a lonely tentacle monster, he enters your bedroom in the middle of the night, then convinces you that 8 arms are better than 2, and he leaves you feeling exhausted and satisfied. When this book arrived in the mail, I was a little scared. I've read horrible, poorly written, problematic romance on this channel before, and I've deeply criticized them of their glorification of abusive behavior and bad writing, and I was ready to do it again. Now, there is actually a very neat list of content warnings at the start of the book so that you know what you're getting into. For example, I read the list and thought, nope, that does not sound like something I ever want to read, and then proceeded to read it anyway for your guys' sake. At the end it says, all acts in this book take place between 2 consenting adults, which I find very funny because one of the content warnings is for murder. Did that happen between 2 consenting adults? Let's find out. We start off with our main character Lexi complaining about the cold, and then she hears a voice being carried over the wind, and it whispers, "Mate." To which I thought, oh, I didn't know this book was British. And then I realized that they mean like soulmate kind of mate. We get a little bit of an introduction to Lexi. She's a barista, but she really wants to make her hobby of making art her real job, but no one really takes her seriously. No one appreciates her. No one appreciates her art. She's very lonely, but then one of her co-workers and friends, Jessica, is like, you know what you should do? You should listen to this video of like subconscious deep brain waves to attract a soulmate. You know those videos that you sometimes randomly get recommended of like, listen to this while you sleep to clear your skin or to get good grades? Those kind of videos, but to attract a soulmate. That's what our main character listens to. And then she kind of lists all the things that she's looking for in a soulmate. He has to be tall, of course. He has to be the type of man who wraps his strong arms around my body. I guess you can see where this is going. Oh, and she wants one who doesn't listen to alpha male podcasts, which, you know, if he's a being from another dimension, I'm sure they don't have Andrew Tate there. Then, at night, she sees a tall figure standing at the foot of her bed, his head nearly reaching the lampshade. Moonlight streams in from the window, illuminating his biceps and broad shoulders. This, by the way, is already a better description because at first I really thought he was going to be just like an octopus man, like a literal octopus monster, but he does resemble a human being. To some extent. The intruder spreads his arms wide. Shadowy tentacles shoot out from his torso. That's when tendrils of doubt creep out from the farthest corners of my mind, which honestly, sorry, tendrils of doubt? That is literary genius right there. Every ragged breath makes my nipples tinge, which is a strange thing to think about, considering I'm about to die. The monster's tentacles are everywhere, around my waist, between my thighs. I guess you can see where this is going. So this monster turns out to come from another dimension, and he is her soulmate. You know, because she used the soulmate vibrations video, and it actually attracted her soulmate, who is a tentacle monster, but you know. We get a description of his face, which is arched brows, high cheekbones, and a perfectly straight nose. His mouth is wide, not monstrously so, and his lips are sensual and full. Maybe this entire book is just fan fiction about handsome Octo. So, she grabs whatever is near her, and just grabs like a toy from her nightstand, throws it at him in self-defense. But he catches it, of course, because, you know, the tentacles. And he's like, "What is this weapon of yours? Is it an implement for food preparation?" One thing leads to another, and our main character has a brief moment of existential introspection where she wonders, could I really let a tentacle monster go down on me? You know, those are the questions they don't teach you the answer to in school. I hope that by now we're all noticing that this book is very clearly not written to be like a regular book. It's very unserious, and it doesn't take itself seriously at all. And I feel like that is kind of the case for most monster smut novels. I mean, if you just take a look at the titles that authors give to these novels, you can kind of see it's all kind of tongue-in-cheek. There's a lot of genre self-awareness of how weird and bizarre it is, but it's just people having fun with like their fun little weird monster fantasies and just kind of giving an outlet to it. And I think it's very easy to just kind of make this video and be like, haha, look at this insane thing. You would have to be insane to write this. I don't want to give in to the tendency that people have to look at women making a joke and assuming that they're not in on their own joke. We still live under the idea that women aren't funny, and I very often see this leading, you know, online to people not realizing when a woman makes a joke and then laughing at her, not realizing that it was a joke and not just a woman being dumb or incapable. And I feel like a kind of similar thing might be happening to like the monster smut genre, where people just look at it and think, oh my gosh, this is so bad and so horribly written, when in reality I think it's on purpose. I'm pretty sure it's on purpose. Like, when I first opened this book and read the dedication on the first page, I knew that I had just struck 24 karat gold. It reads, "To everyone who ever wanted things to bump and grind in the night." Immediately showing me that this book does not take itself serious at all. All the bits that we're laughing at them not because they're poorly written, but because Siggy Shade wrote these things as a joke. Except for the whole spicy part. That is definitely serious. But we'll get there. Because they are now soulmates, he wants her to stop using the tool. This is the moment where I thought, oh no, there we go. This is where we're gonna get some horrifically problematic smut scenes like I've seen so many times before in these kind of stories. But actually, our main character has a honestly pretty great moment where she's like, well, if you don't want me to use the toy, maybe you should prove to me that you're better than it. And honestly, good for her. They then proceed to establish very clear consent before all the smut happens. I did not expect this to happen. The scene itself definitely includes a few jump scares, such as, instead of the pointed tentacle tip I expect, you know, of course you just expect a normal tentacle tip, right? The appendage splits into smaller tendrils as fine as string. He rubs my belly, preparing me for something ominous. "What are you doing?" I ask. "Making sure you have enough room." "For what?" "Permission seems important to you," he replies matter-of-factly, "and I won't move on to phase 3 until you give me your enthusiastic consent." Phase 3? What is phase 3? If you think, well, that's quick, so does Lexi. She's like, actually, no, I don't want to do that. And then they proceed to not do that. Not until I give you my permission. Is that understood? Course, my mate, he replies. Sorry, I can't read it any other way. At this point, I thought, you know what? This really isn't that bad. I didn't know what was coming for me later down the line. She goes back to her room and we get to know the monster a little bit more, okay? Because now it's light outside, but he doesn't want to show himself to her. He only wants to show himself in the dark. I'm not having sex with an octopus man that refuses to show his true form. You know, I can't say I disagree with the main character. I can't say. So she shines a light on his face and he is revealed to be a beautiful, angelic man with blonde hair and blue eyes and handsome features. But then he says, I wish you hadn't done that. Why not? His handsome face turns cold, and his lips curve into a grin as sharp as it is wicked. Light erodes our compassion. Now I have no reservations about taking what I want from my mate. Uh-oh. He stalks towards her, letting her know that he is going to take what he wants. But I thought you wanted to take it slow, I squeak. That was before all the goodness in me burned out in the light. Lexi, as the smart girl that she is, immediately turns off the light, hoping that he will revert back to his sweet self. But then the light just turns on, seemingly out of nowhere. My eyes widen. How did you do that? Tentacles, he says, with a wink. She tries to run away, but he catches her. You know, because of the tentacles. Yeah. And this is where yet again I thought, well, here we go. There it is. Another romance book where some alpha man being dominant and possessive is being used as an excuse for dubious consent. But I was mistaken. And we actually get a pretty great example of how you can establish consent in a situation with a power dynamic like this. I'm gonna be honest, I'm not lying when I say that this book has better consent than some of the romance books that I've read. Like normal mainstream romance books. Siggy Shade could write an Emily Henry book, but Emily Henry could never write a Siggy Shade book. The tentacles end up in her mouth, which honestly is one of the less weird places that his tentacles are gonna end up being. We're only on page 50, guys. We're only on page 50. He's doing all these things to her that are honestly pretty horrible. I'll spare you the details, but we were warned with the content warnings. She's like crying and all. Your face is contorting. He wipes my eyes. There is now moisture in your nostrils. Yes, I say through hiccuping breaths. That's what happens when a person gets overloaded. I will remember to limit the strikes on your to 3. This is funny. So although she was enjoying herself at first, at some point the torture just gets a little bit too much for her, you know. You know how that happens sometimes. And remember how, like, the monster is very sadistic when the light is on, but sweeter when the light is off? This actually creates a pretty clever setup where Lexi can use the light switch as a safe word. So the moment the scene is getting a little bit too much for her, she can just turn off the lights. Now, granted, they don't use this in the rest of the book at all anymore, but could have been cool. He then provides her with aftercare. He gives her a massage, he cuddles her, he wraps his tentacles around her like a cocoon. I don't think a weighted blanket can match that. I rolled up one of my tentacles to form a cushion for you while I work. Yeah. Then we just get smut scene after smut scene, at which point I started questioning my entire life, my place in the universe, and how I'm using my time. I feel like when you're opening a fanfic and you see the tag "Dead Dove Do Not Eat" and you think to yourself, it's fine, I'll just read it. And then you realize it's not fine. It's not even close to being fine. Then we get a bit of a character storyline, because throughout the story Lexi has been referring to him as the monster, but he is kind of hurt by this. It really hurts his feeling. He just wants to be seen as her soulmate, not a monster. Am I so monstrous? I bite down on my lower lip. You have a nice personality, and you seem caring and easy to talk to, but in our world, there aren't many creatures with tentacles. At least not any that can talk. I keep imagining you as an octopus. Why do I feel bad for this monster now? Why do I care about the feelings of this monster now? And they talk about how apparently the more time they will spend together, the less monstrous he will become. And I think this is kind of the appeal of monster romances, because it seems to come up a lot in reviews. Benny Burton writes, regular male characters in romance tend to be over-the-top, perfect, glistening warriors and knights, but I want an imperfect monster who needs love to show that he can be just as sweet as his human competition. Why deprive the imagination of a great romance just because the protagonist happens to live for 600 years or has the occasional bout with fleas? Which, first of all, I think is another sign that a lot of monster smut romance readers are very aware of kind of like the absurdity. They're all just kind of poking fun at it as well. But it does appear that maybe the appeal of monster romance is because it's just one big I can fix him fantasy, which I'm personally never really a fan of. I think it really plays into a lot of people's feelings of having to be the one to take care of your partner, like especially women, like having to be the one to use all of your power to just kind of like take care of them instead of it going both ways. But honestly, this is also out of this world and otherworldly. I struggle to make any real life societal critique of it. This is the point where the book truly becomes something I never could have foreseen. This is the point where they kind of reverse the roles, you know, she's touching him, but he's oozing liquid from many parts of his body, which has an anatomical reason, of course. She finishes him, and there's this explosion of liquid which seeps into her skin, and he says, "It is only the beginning, your awakening." But they are rudely interrupted by Lexi's boss, Mr. Roberts, who's very angry at her for missing work so many days. So she finally goes back to work. It turns out that apparently a lot of her co-workers have been calling in sick as well, because Jessica, her friend, has been sharing, you know, like the Find Your Soulmate vibrations video with all of their co-workers, and then, you know, they've all been calling in sick. So apparently there's like this whole group of tentacle monsters that have been finding human women through this YouTube videos of finding your soulmates. I could not make this up. Lexi's boss takes her apart in another room and scolds her, gets really angry at her, grabs her by the shoulders, but then look who it is. It is our monster tentacle man in his human form coming to save her. He touched what was mine, he says. If there's one thing that I can critique of this book is that unfortunately we do get the typical touch of very possessive men constantly talking about how, you know, she's mine. And I really don't like this whole fated mate possession thing. Possessive behavior is often presented in romance novels as something sweet, as something that is a sign of another person truly loving you or really caring about you. And I despise this because red flag number one for toxic relationships is when the other person doesn't allow you to be around other people, to form bonds with other men or just friends, because they see it as a threat. That is red flag number one for potential abusive relationships. So that's why I hate it that it's often being presented as something nice and sweet in romance novels. I think it really gives the wrong message to the readers. In a turn of events, we find out that Mr. Roberts, Lexi's boss, has been secretly stealing her paintings and selling them for profit without her realizing somehow. Now, her tentacle man mate is also there restraining Mr. Roberts, and he's like, hey, you know, I need to feed of a human so I can remain in this dimension. So, obvious answer is that they have to kill Mr. Roberts. My mate spreads out his arms and tentacles stretch out from his middle. The tentacles form a cocoon around Mr. Roberts' body and drag him across the floor, and then he eats him. And they hatch a plan where Lexi's mate will take over the appearance, because they're shapeshifters, of Mr. Roberts, so that they can pretend they never killed him and he can run the coffee shop. Okay. I turn to the doorway to find Mr. Roberts standing in his usual attire, looking at me like I'm hot chocolate with whipped cream. My heart flips like a panini. I want you to call me mate. Why? Because I might have the body of a human, but my soul belongs to you. My heart melts as his tentacles unfasten my barista apron. Like I said, Emily Henry could never. Are you ready for some octopus anatomy? Which one is your mating arm? She asks. So, here's the thing. Male octopuses have a separate tentacle for mating. It is called a hectocotylus, and because Siggy Shade is respectful of science and biology, this also appears in the book. A thinner tentacle rises between our bodies, while the others are thicker than my thighs. His mating arm has the girth of my forearm. You know, I gotta hand it to Siggy Shade. She is creative. Now, every smut scene so far has been very graphic in its use of words, but because of the introduction of this mating arm, the entire scene reads like like one of those romance books that's just like desperately trying to find another euphemism. Fill me with that mating arm. The sensations are so overwhelming that my eyes flutter shut as he pushes more and more of the mating arm into me. But when he reaches my cervix, the little tendrils expand. You like it? He purrs. Every part of my mating arm is savoring you. As he says this, the extra tendrils caress the contours of my insides. So now that their mating is complete, the climax of their romance is that aside from using his mating arm, he also has, you know, like human anatomy to use. So they have a little double penetration moment, human and octopus together in one, yin and yang, sun and moon. It's so romantic. It's a very, very sweet moment, really. Then we get a time skip. I'm not kidding. Out of nowhere, we just get 1 year later. And at this moment I thought, are we already getting the epilogue? No. No. Nothing could have prepared me for this. What happens 1 year later? So, you know, at this point they've already penetrated every hole possible, and we realize the only next step in this tentacle extravaganza. He says, I want triplets. Just unprovoked. But why 3? I ask. I cannot be satisfied with impregnating you once, he growls. Now, mating in the tentacle world is not like in the regular world. It's a multiple day ordeal, which involves many climaxes. Because of course it does. It was at this point that I had truly become numb to everything. I could read about them using every orifice, all the tentacles, all the oozing. It just didn't faze me anymore. Until his eyes dance with mirth What a greedy little mate. I will give you exactly what you want, but first you must swallow a bellyful of my special ink. Everything about my mate is an aphrodisiac, from his masculine beauty to the lubricant he secretes through his tentacles. Lexi, I think we have a bit of a different idea of what works as an aphrodisiac here. But basically she has to drink his special ink because it will get her into the mating frenzy, which is necessary for their mating ritual. This is all just for the ritual, okay? They're doing this to populate the world. This is an act of God. So she swallows a full belly full of his special ink. She comes into the mating frenzy, which causes her to release like multiple eggs at the same time during ovulation so that they can make triplets. It also makes her ravenous for the mating ritual, which is also just another feat of biology, a wonder of life. Let me read this to you. You're not gonna believe what I'm about to say. Your taste is changing, my love. I am going to relax your cervix. His tentacle pushes against the neck of my womb. I feel its blunt tips separate into smaller appendages, each with pointed ends that push into the cervix, infusing me with delicious shockwaves. So he's inside of her cervix now, which, if you don't know biology, that's like the opening of the womb. Like, he's going inside her womb. And nothing is supposed to go there except for a baby. The little tentacles slithering through my cervix expand, opening me wide. And then her mate says, "You're doing so well. I can fit a full tentacle through your cervix." She is basically reverse giving birth at this point, and she's rolling in pleasure as they do it. So at least she's enjoying it. I'm not. Thank you for entrusting me with your body. Thank you for agreeing to bear my young. It feels like you are ready to be bred. That wasn't the breeding yet. He was just making room. They haven't bred yet. That's what's gonna happen now. It gets even worse. He grips his mating arm. The slit widens, exposing a thin white tendril that lashes from side to side like a tail. What is that? I ask between panting breaths. My spermatophore, he replies, his voice husky. Okay, so spermatophores are actually a real thing in octopus anatomy, okay? Little biology lesson here. So, this is what I got from Wikipedia. A spermatophore is a capsule containing spermatozoa created by males of various animal species, especially salamanders and arthropods, but also cephalopods like squid and octopi. Most cephalopods use a specialized arm called the hectocotylus. This is the mating arm we've been talking about, remember? To deliver the spermatophores to the female. The spermatophores of the giant Pacific octopus are about 1 meter long. Well, turns out our tentacle man is kind of lacking in that area, 'cause his is not that long. Now I'm going to fill you with my young. They have a bit of fun again. She reaches her climax. I feel the spermatophore sneaking further and further up my uterus, and I can only imagine how many eggs it has managed to swallow. At this point, this is just body horror. I feel like critiquing this book for being too weird at this point would be like criticizing a horror movie for being too scary. But apparently that one time's not enough. He needs to do it 3 times if they want to get triplets. At this point, she is climaxing every single page, by the way. So just so you know, she's at least enjoying this. They're using every opening imaginable. They're telling each other, I love you. It's a moment of entangled emotions and intense companionship. And she feels the second spermatophore and the third spermatophore doing their thing inside of her uterus. I'm his and he's mine. I am also pregnant with his triplets. romance. 4 years later, they have 3 beautiful children who all love painting just like she does. But of course, you're asking yourself the question, what the hell do these children look like? Aren't they human? Well, they do have invisible tentacles, just like the mate when he's in the light, but they look human. And they have friends because they can play with all the other Umbra children because of all of these other human women that have attracted like a tentacle soulmate through the YouTube video. Everyone's happy. They do, however, like conveniently not mention how she gave birth and how that went. So I get, you know, we can use our imagination. You know, when I decided to make this video, I expected something harmful, problematic, to the likes of Gothicana that we could have a discussion about. Instead, I just got something that was so bizarre and weird that I just have nothing to say. My conclusion on this book, first of all, it's not poorly written because of how self-aware it is, and it's downright funny in its absurdity. It's also not even problematic. The relationship is never really toxic aside from some possessiveness, and there's a lot of established enthusiastic consent. There's content warnings at the beginning so that you know what you're getting into. So I feel like I can't really say that it's bad because I'm clearly not the target audience. If you would like some more serious book reviews, you can check out my other videos. And if you enjoy that, you can subscribe to the channel. We would love to have you here. I hope I made your day a little bit better with this video. I hope you have a wonderful rest of your day, and I will see you soon in another video next week. Goodbye!